By dusk, the old cemetery lay smothered in blue mist. A gas lamp flickered. Between the stones, a figure stood motionless.
There's a man where no man should be. He's staring at the oldest section.
The stranger wore clothes that didn't belong. He nodded once, slowly, then turned and walked behind the headstones.
I need to see who that is. Nobody stays after 8.
Gregory followed, but the path behind the graves was empty. No footprints, no sound, just the fog.
He vanished. I watched him step behind this stone, and he's gone.
Ice crawled up his spine. He felt watched from every shadow and fled toward the gate, refusing to look back.
3 years on this job, and I've never been afraid. This place feels wrong tonight.
He checked the locks in a rush. The fog thickened, curling through the bars like fingers. In his truck, he stared at the dark cemetery in the mirror. He'd have to return at dawn. The next morning, Gregory walked straight to the oldest section. Daylight made the headstones look ordinary, but his nerves still prickled.
No footprints, no disturbed earth. He couldn't have just evaporated.
Then his eyes caught a particular grave. The stone leaned sideways, half hidden under moss.
Elias Hawthorne, died 1847. I've never noticed this stone before.
You look like you saw a ghost. What's wrong, Gregory?
Something strange last night. A man was in the oldest section after closing. He just disappeared.
Trick of the light, kid. These old stones play games with your eyes at dusk. Don't start believing in rumors.
He's wrong. I saw that man as clearly as I see this stone.
Gregory snapped a photo of the inscription. The name felt important, even if he couldn't say why.
Need to find out who you were, Elias Hawthorne.
3 nights later, the fog crept back heavier than memory. Gregory lit his lantern and walked into the oldest section. The figure stood where he'd first seen it, a dark pillar between the leaning stones.
Gregory's throat tightened. Same man, same silent nod. This was no accident. He forced his voice to work. Who are you? What do you want?
The figure tilted its head, then walked behind the headstones. Gregory rushed forward. Empty space. Nothing but swirling mist.
The air tasted of cold iron and damp decay. I am standing in his trail and he's gone.
He found Harold in the maintenance shed, staring into a coffee cup as if it held answers.
Harold, you said trick of the light. I saw him again. He looked at me and nodded.
Harold set down his mug. Every groundskeeper sees him eventually. I was hoping you'd be different. He's the old caretaker. Died in 1847 after 40 years on this ground. He won't harm you, but don't chase him. That's the one rule.
The next afternoon, Gregory drove into town, the photo of the grave pressing against his conscience. He found the Millville Historical Society.
If Harold won't tell me everything, someone here will.
The archive smelled of old paper and linseed oil. Margaret Finch, the elderly volunteer, peered over her reading glasses.
I'm researching a name from the old cemetery. Elias Hawthorne. He died in 1847.
Ah, Elias. We don't get many inquiries about him. She pulled a leather-bound ledger from a shelf.
She opened the book, spidery handwriting recorded. Hawthorne, Elias, Groundskeeper, 1807-1847.
He worked those grounds his whole life, 40 years. They found him one evening, collapsed beside the main gate, his keys still in his hand.
That's why he appears at dusk, still trying to finish his rounds.
It's said that every groundskeeper since has reported seeing him at sunset. He never harms anyone. He just nods and walks away.
Gregory left the archive with a photocopy of the journal entry and a strange, growing sense of kinship with a man who died over a century ago. That evening, Gregory walked the cemetery with new eyes. He carried a fresh-lit lantern, not for guidance, but as an offering.
He deserves a light on his grave. 40 years and nobody even leaves a flower.
He set the lantern against the cold granite. The flame steadied, licking the carved letters of Hawthorne's name. The air stilled. A familiar weight pressed on his shoulders, and he turned.
He's there. Close enough that I could see the hollow of his eyes. But he's not retreating.
The figure gave a slow nod, then raised one arm and pointed south, past the leaning stones. Gregory squinted into the dark tangle of yew and wild rose. The southern corner was overgrown, avoided even by staff.
He's directing me. But why? What's back there that I haven't seen in 3 years?
In the morning, a sprig of rosemary lay on the headstone, cold with dew. No footprint led to it. Someone or something had answered that evening. The figure returned, pointing again, a silent, unrelenting compass. Gregory understood. The ghost had a purpose he couldn't ignore. Next morning, Gregory fought his way into the southern thicket. Thorny branches clawed his jacket, but he pushed through until a rotted shed appeared.
Nobody's been here in years. Why would Elias lead me to this?
The door hung on one hinge. Inside, dust choked the air, and old tools lay rusted. A floorboard near the wall creaked under his boot.
That board is loose. There's something underneath.
He pried it up and found a leather-bound journal, its cover mottled with age. The pages inside were still legible.
Journal of Oliver Crane, 1923. He saw the old caretaker too, and he drew something.
On a yellowed page, a careful sketch of an ornate iron key, its bow twisted into a serpent swallowing its tail.
A serpent key. I've never seen anything like it. He hid this because it mattered.
Below the sketch, in looping script, was written, "The key to the forgotten gate." Gregory's pulse hammered.
The key to the forgotten gate. That's what Elias wants me to find. I need to copy this.
Over the next week, Gregory retraced the journal's faded clues along the cemetery's wild eastern border. Thorns tore at his sleeves, but he kept pushing. At last, behind a curtain of ivy, his fingers met cold iron. A gate, ancient and heavy, stood fused with the stone.
The forgotten gate. It's real. Oliver Crane found it before me.
He cleared the moss from the lock. The keyhole was shaped like a coiled serpent, its eye a dark void.
It matches the drawing perfectly. The serpent swallows its tail.
He fumbled for his master key. It slid in, but the lock refused to turn, as if waiting for something else.
Of course not. This gate wants a specific key, one that probably hasn't been turned in 100 years.
He stepped back, the gate a silent sentinel in the gloom. Even the birds were quiet.
I can't force this. Elias will show me the key when he's ready. Until then, I guard the secret.
He pulled the ivy back over the iron and walked away, the lock's serpent eye watching his retreat. Harold's retirement morning was quiet. He packed his locker, erasing 40 years in a cardboard box.
35 years. Still feels unfinished. You've seen the old caretaker, Gregory. I know. I used to lie, but I've seen him dozens of times. He waits, holding something back. Only the patient, the ones who stay, ever get it.
What? Get what?
I never earned it, but on your last day, if you are worthy, he gives you something. A token. The cemetery is yours now. Listen to what he shows you, and don't push. That's all I can say.
Harold left, and Gregory stood alone in the silent shed, the weight of the gate pressing on his chest.
Now I am the keeper. The gate, the key, the ghost, they're all mine to bear.
He walked out into the mist. The oldest section seemed to breathe. It no longer felt like a threat. Weeks stretched into months. Gregory walked the evening rounds, but the oldest section stayed silent and empty.
I've returned to his grave every night, lit a lantern, Left Rosemary. He stays hidden like I failed a test I don't understand.
The headstone offered no answer. The rosemary withered untouched. The silence felt like a door closing.
Did I push too hard? Maybe Harold was wrong. Maybe there is no key.
The cemetery that once hummed with purpose turned hollow. Each dusk felt heavier, a reminder of ghosts that refused to appear.
I am becoming the keeper of a story no one believes. Even I am starting to doubt.
Still, he did his job. Clipped the badge each morning, oiled the hinges, raked the leaves. The ritual became a kind of prayer.
Maybe this is the only offering that counts. Not rosemary or lanterns, just showing up.
He stopped waiting, stopped watching for a figure between the stones. He gave the dead their distance, and slowly the ache dulled. And in that surrender, a quiet patience settled over him. The gate would wait, so would he. It was December, the anniversary of Elias's death. Gregory finished his rounds under a cold, silent moon and drove home exhausted.
Another year passed. I haven't seen him in months. Maybe I never will again.
Sleep took him into a dream where the cemetery stretched without end, headstones repeating into a white, silent fog. Through the fog walked Elias Hawthorne, no longer a mere silhouette, but a man with kind, sorrowful eyes. In his hand, a key glowed softly.
You are real. The key. You brought it.
Elias placed the key in Gregory's palm. It was heavy, cold iron, shaped exactly like the sketch. Serpent tail swallowing its own head.
Then weight vanished. Gregory jolted upright in his dark bedroom, clutching a fist that held nothing but air.
He sat still for a long while, tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. But beneath the loss, a new certainty planted itself in his chest at dawn. He opened his logbook and wrote the date carefully. Beneath it, a single word, promised. The key was real, waiting for a moment he hadn't yet earned. When the time came, Elias would press it into his living hand. Gregory would be ready. The years laid their quiet weight across Gregory's shoulders. His hair turned gray, then white, his face lining into a map of every season he had kept. Once or twice a year, the figure appeared in the mist. It never came closer, but sometimes it lifted a hand, and Gregory glimpsed the outline of a key.
Another sighting. He's still watching. I've marked 23 dates now, and not once has he let me get closer.
He learned to accept the rhythm. The ghost was never a threat, only a quiet companion in an endless task. They walked the same ground, separated by a century and a veil of fog. His badge now read Head Groundskeeper, with a brass plate marking over 20 years. The younger staff called him the Old Soul of the cemetery, the one who talked to ghosts. He raked autumn leaves with the same care his father had taught him, and in the quiet of the falling gold, he felt less alone.
I've lived more years with the ghost than without. Funny how the impossible becomes ordinary.
From the hilltop, the cemetery looked like a constellation of warm lamps in the blue twilight, each flame a watchful eye. Gregory knew every stone, every shadow. In the maintenance shed, the calendar on the wall showed a single date circled in red. His retirement, 3 months away.
3 months. If the key is coming, it'll be between now and then. I've waited this long. I can wait a little more.
In early April, the new hire arrived. Leo Carver was barely 22, with eager brown eyes and a grip on his lantern that still trembled slightly at dusk.
I can't believe I get to work here. It feels alive, somehow. Not what I expected.
Keep that feeling. This place has a memory longer than either of us. I should tell him about Elias. But if I do, he'll chase shadows like I did.
They walked the oldest section. Leo noted the moss on the graves, the leaning stones, but Gregory offered no ghost stories.
This might help you. Years of observations. Read them when you are ready.
Observations like weather and birds or something else.
Something else. Just keep an open mind. And don't chase what you can't explain. He'll understand one day, or he won't. Either way, the ground will teach him.
Leo carried the logbooks to his truck that night, their pages heavy with a century of silent vigils. He didn't open them yet. Each round that final week felt like a farewell. Gregory lingered at every gate, every bend in the path.
Every stone, every leaf, I've raked 100 times. And Elias is still silent.
On Friday, he swept the main path with a broom worn smooth by his own hands, then leaned it in the shed corner for the last time. At sunset, he walked to the oldest section and stopped before the grave that had become an altar.
Elias Hawthorne. All these years, and I still don't know why you chose me, or if you ever will. The silence feels like an answer. Maybe the test was never about the key.
He pressed his palm flat against the cold stone. The moss was familiar under his fingers, like a handshake that never ended.
If this is the end, I am grateful. For the fog, the nods, the rosemary. Even if I never open that gate.
No wind answered. No figure appeared. But the gas lamp by the path burned steady, as if keeping a promise.
Tomorrow is my last shift. I'll walk it with dignity, whether he comes or not.
The last day dawned gray and still. Gregory sat in his truck, staring at the cemetery gate, his hands resting on the wheel.
I've opened that gate thousands of times. This is the last.
He punched his time card, then walked the perimeter, checking locks and hinges one final time.
All secure. It's just ritual now, but ritual matters.
He lingered in the rose garden, where the blooms nodded under the gray sky, releasing a last fragrance. At the mausoleum, he traced the carved angel's wing, a habit from his first year on the grounds. He saved the oldest section for last, circling near it, but never stepping in until the gas lamps flickered on.
Not yet. Give the sun time to sink below the stones.
When the final lamp steadied and the mist thickened, Gregory breathed deep and stepped into the blue gloom.
This is it. Whatever happens, I am here.
He stood before the stone, lantern lowering, and let the minutes pass. The mist became a wall, swallowing even the nearest headstones.
An hour. Maybe more. My knees ache, but I won't leave.
The cold seeped into his joints, but he didn't move. His breath came slow, merging with the fog.
Maybe he won't come. Maybe the dream was just a dream.
Then, the mist itself seemed to thicken into a shape. Between two towering yews, a familiar darkness gathered. Elias Hawthorne stepped into the lantern's glow. His coat was clear now, his face pale but serene. He was closer than ever before. For a long moment, neither moved. The ghost simply watched, and Gregory met those ancient eyes without flinching.
You came. After all this time, you are really here.
Gregory gave a slow, deliberate nod. The same gesture he'd first seen 21 years ago. The ghost's head inclined in answer. No words, no key yet, but the air itself had shifted. The old groundskeeper had acknowledged his successor. Then, Elias moved. Step by silent step, he advanced across the frost-bitten grass, his coat never rustling. He stopped an arm's length away. His right hand lifted, fingers curled around something small and dark. His fingers unfurled. In his palm lay a heavy iron key, the serpent swallowing its tail, exactly as the journal had drawn.
The key from my dream. The one I've been waiting half my life to hold.
Elias lowered the key into Gregory's trembling hand. The metal was icy, heavy as a promise kept. The ghost's face shifted. For a single, impossible moment, Elias Hawthorne smiled, a faint, sorrowful warmth. Then he turned and walked back. With each step, the mist swallowed him a little more, until only the key remained. Gregory stood alone, the cold iron biting into his palm, his throat locked around words he couldn't speak.
After 21 years, he gave it. Not to open a gate, just to know I was worthy.
He didn't test it in the gate. He simply held it under that silent moon as the cemetery kept its long watch. He walked to the forgotten gate, pushing through the wet ivy, the cold key ready in his palm. He slid the key into the serpent lock. It fit without resistance, but the bolt stayed frozen.
Of course, it wouldn't. The ghost hadn't given an answer, only a bond across time.
He tried every lock he knew. The shed, mausoleum, back gate. The key turned in none.
A quiet laugh. He finally understood. The key wasn't a tool. It was a handshake.
He pocketed the key, its weight a quiet promise against his heart. He finished his rounds and locked the main gate with his own key for the final time.
That click felt like a door closing on 21 years of service.
In the truck, he sat a long while, watching the dark cemetery shrink in the rearview mirror, the key pressed against his leg. He would never discover its lock. That mystery was now his, and he was deeply grateful. At home, he placed the key on the mantel next to the old cemetery photograph.
This is its home now. Not a lock, but where I can see it every day.
He found a strip of velvet and arranged the key so the serpent bow caught the firelight. A neighbor asked about the strange key. Gregory just smiled and gave a small shake of his head.
Some stories aren't meant to be told. They're meant to be carried.
Evenings, he sat on the porch, the key resting on his chest, watching the distant tree line.
I don't need to know its lock. The waiting was the gift.
He never sought answers at the Historical Society again. The mystery was complete. Friends noticed a new stillness in him, a quiet fulfillment that he wore like a warm coat. And at sunset, he'd hold the key and whisper a silent thanks to Elias Hawthorne. 5 years later, on the anniversary of his retirement, Gregory's old truck rattled up to the cemetery gate.
Gregory Hale, as I live and breathe. You look like you haven't aged a day.
Leo, you've got some gray yourself. The cemetery agrees with you.
They walked the familiar path to the oldest section, their footsteps in sync with a rhythm older than both of them.
Elias Hawthorne. He was a groundskeeper here in 1847. I saw him for the first time 26 years ago, and he gave me this.
The key from the logbooks. The one he drew. It's real.
I've carried it long enough. It belongs here now with him.
The key rested on the cold stone, the serpent tail catching the last light of the gas lamp.
You are the groundskeeper now, Leo. If he appears, just nod. He's never been a threat, only a keeper.
I'll remember, and I'll watch for him. Thank you, Gregory.
Hours after Gregory's truck had faded down the road, Leo found himself standing before the Hawthorne grave. The key still lay on the moss, untouched.
It's still here, cold and wet with dew. He didn't take it back.
As he lifted the key, the temperature plunged. His breath turned to vapor, and the lantern flame guttered. A figure solidified between the yews. Elias Hawthorne, clearer than ever, stood a few paces away.
He's real, exactly as Gregory described. And he's looking right at me.
Leo didn't run. He straightened, the key clutched in his fist, and met the specter's gaze. Then the ghost inclined his head, a slow, deliberate nod that carried the weight of centuries.
He's acknowledging me, just like he did with Gregory. I understand. I'll keep the watch.
The ghost's lips seemed to curl, a vestige of a smile. Then he faded into the mist, leaving Leo alone with the key. Weeks passed. Leo kept the key on a cord around his neck, just as Gregory had done, and the cemetery routine became his own. One evening, following the logbook's clues, he pushed through the brambles to the forgotten gate. The ivy was thicker now, but his lantern found the serpent lock.
Gregory never opened this, but the key is mine now. Maybe it's time.
He slid the key in. This time, the lock gave a deep, resonant click that echoed through the stones. The iron hinges groaned, and he pulled the gate wide, stepping into the secret garden. Old roses, dense and wild, perfumed the air. A marble bench sat covered in petals, and a single lantern pole stood empty.
A garden hidden for a century. That's why the key felt like a handshake. It was guarding a living memory, not a deadlock. No one will ever know. This stays between Elias, Gregory, and me.
He locked the gate behind him and pocketed the key, its serpent bow warm against his palm. The garden returned to silence. Leo finished his rounds that night with a lighter step. The cemetery held another secret, and he was its guardian now. Gregory Hale passed peacefully in his sleep. At 93, on a spring morning, his will was simple. Ashes to the oldest section. Leo stood among a handful of mourners that afternoon, releasing Gregory's ashes on a wind that carried them toward Elias's stone. That night, after the gates were locked, Leo lingered in the oldest section. The key was cool against his chest. The mist thickened, and two silhouettes took shape where only one had ever stood. One was Elias, his long coat unmistakable. The other was younger, sturdier, Gregory as he had looked the year he first saw the ghost. They stood side by side before the hawthorn headstone, and together they turned and nodded once.
They're together now. A pair of keepers for a cemetery that never sleeps.
Leo clutched the key and returned their nod. He understood that he was part of something far older than his own years. The mist rolled over the figures, and they dissolved like breath on a cold window. The cemetery fell into its familiar silence. But Gregory Hale was not gone. Not truly. He had simply taken his place among the watchers.